It's almost too consistent to be a coincidence. You finally meet someone who feels exciting, someone you can't stop thinking about, someone whose attention feels harder to get than the people who came before them. And that difficulty, somehow, makes you want them more. A few months in, the dynamic is locked. You're the one initiating. You're the one feeling slightly more invested. You're the one waiting for them to come back when they pull away. They're the one who says they need space. Who feels suffocated when you ask for more. Who somehow always seems to be a step further away than you'd like. And the strangest part is, you've been here before. Not with this person. With other people. The names change. The pattern doesn't. What you're caught in has a name. Researchers call it the anxious-avoidant trap. And once you can see why it keeps happening, you can start to understand why the people who hurt you the most are usually the people you're most drawn to. To understand the trap, you have to understand something most people miss about attachment styles. Anxious attachment and avoidant attachment are not opposites. They're not different points on a single spectrum. They're two different solutions to the same original problem. The original problem was the same for both. As a child, you needed connection from people whose responsiveness was unreliable. The connection was sometimes there, and sometimes not. Your nervous system had to do something with that. If you became anxiously attached, your nervous system chose vigilance. Monitor the connection. Notice every shift. Act fast when distance appears. Bring the closeness back by any means necessary. If you became avoidantly attached, your nervous system chose distance. Don't depend on the unreliable thing. Get good at not needing. Build a life where the connection mattering less means it can't hurt you when it disappears. Both strategies came from the same source. Both were trying to solve the same problem. They just chose opposite directions. This is why anxious people and avoidant people are not foreign to each other. They are deeply familiar to each other. Their nervous systems have been studying versions of each other their entire lives. They recognize each other across a room, even if they don't know what they're recognizing. That recognition is not chemistry. It's not soulmate energy. It's not fate. It's two systems calibrated for the same dynamic, finding the partner they were trained to find. Here's what actually happens when an anxious person and an avoidant person meet. In the first few weeks, the dynamic looks beautiful. The anxious person is attentive, expressive, emotionally generous. The avoidant person, who usually feels suffocated by too much closeness, feels safe at this stage because they haven't committed to anything yet. The relationship is new. The exits are still close by. The avoidance system isn't activated yet. The anxious person experiences this as the best beginning of any relationship they've had. The avoidant is being warm. They're showing up. They're not pulling away. The anxious nervous system, which was braced for inconsistency, can finally relax, at least for a little while. Then, something shifts. Usually around the time the relationship starts to feel real. When the prospect of long-term closeness becomes concrete instead of theoretical. When the avoidant person realizes that this is not just a casual thing. This person is actually getting close. The avoidant nervous system activates. Something it learned a long time ago, deep below conscious awareness, registers a threat. The threat is not the partner. The threat is the closeness itself. The avoidance system experiences too much intimacy, the same way the anxious system experiences too much distance, as a danger to manage immediately. So the avoidant pulls back, not consciously, usually. They might phrase it to themselves as, "I just need a little space," or "I've been busy with work," or "I'm not really feeling it as much this week." They almost never identify the withdrawal as a reaction to closeness. They experience it as a reasonable response to circumstances. But the timing is consistent. Every time the relationship escalates, the avoidance system creates distance. This is where the trap closes, because the moment the avoidant pulls back, the anxious system activates. And the anxious system is built for exactly this. For the experience of a connection that suddenly becomes uncertain. The anxious person doesn't experience the avoidance withdrawal as the avoidant intends it. They experience it as the original threat. The original abandonment returning. The activation is total. The vigilance becomes constant. The need to restore the connection becomes urgent. So the anxious person pursues. They text more. They want to talk about what's happening. They need reassurance. They're trying to bring the closeness back, the only way their system knows how. By reaching harder. And here's the cruel mechanism. The pursuit, which the anxious person experiences as desperate and necessary, is the exact thing that makes the avoidant feel even more suffocated. The closeness the anxious person is trying to restore is the threat the avoidant was trying to escape. Each person's strategy for safety is the other person's trigger. The anxious pursues. The avoidant withdraws. The anxious pursues harder. The avoidant withdraws further. The dynamic accelerates in opposite directions. And then, eventually, the avoidant comes back. They miss the person. They've had enough space that the closeness no longer feels threatening. They re-engage. The anxious person experiences this as relief. The proof that the connection is still there. That the pursuit worked. That they were right to fight for it. There's a brief honeymoon period. A few good weeks. And then the relationship escalates again. The avoidant pulls back again. The anxious activates again. The cycle repeats. This is not a relationship. It's a feedback loop wearing a relationship's clothes. There's a reason this pairing is not just common. It's disproportionately common. In a population with roughly equal numbers of anxious and avoidant people, you would expect random pairing to produce some anxious-avoidant couples and some same-style couples. But the actual rate of anxious-avoidant pairings in real-world relationships is significantly higher than chance would predict. The reason has to do with what researchers sometimes call the secure attachment dating pool. Secure people, who make up roughly half the population, tend to find each other relatively quickly. They form stable partnerships and exit the dating pool. The remaining dating pool, over time, becomes increasingly concentrated with anxious and avoidant people who keep returning to it because their relationships keep failing. Within that pool, the recognition is mutual. Anxious people are not just willing to date avoidance. They are often actively, intensely drawn to them. The pull feels like love. The pull is the activation. Securely attached people dating an anxious person often come across as too easy, too available, too present. The anxious nervous system, which is built for chase and uncertainty, doesn't get its familiar signal. The relationship feels flat, boring, like there's nothing to fight for. So the anxious person, often without meaning to, drifts back towards someone who triggers them, back into the trap. The avoidant experience is parallel. A secure partner who expresses needs directly, who wants closeness in a steady way, will activate the avoidant system constantly. The avoidant feels suffocated, retreats. And the secure person, instead of escalating, instead of becoming the chase, the avoidant's nervous system half expects, simply moves on to someone more compatible. The avoidant ends up back in the dating pool too. And there, waiting, are the anxious partners, whose pursuit feels familiar in a way that secure presence never did. This is why so many anxious people, looking back at their relationship history, see a string of avoidance, and why so many avoidants, looking back, see a string of anxious partners. It's not a coincidence. It's not bad luck. It's two nervous systems, each looking for the other, and finding each other every time. The painful irony is that the relationship that feels most intense to an anxious-avoidant pair is precisely the relationship least equipped to give either of them what they actually need. The activation is high, but the nourishment is low. The drama is constant, but the safety never builds. What an anxious person actually needs to heal is consistent, steady availability. Exactly what an avoidant cannot provide. What an avoidant actually needs to soften is patient non-pursuit. Exactly what an anxious person cannot provide. They are not built to heal each other. They are built to keep each other activated. Here's the thing that's hardest to accept about this pattern. The avoidant in your life is not a villain. The pursuit you keep doing is not pathetic. The dynamic is not anyone's fault, in the simple sense people usually mean when they look for fault. Both of you are running strategies that made sense in your original environments. Both of you are doing what your nervous systems learned to do. Both of you, in the moments of activation, are responding to something much older than the person standing in front of you. The avoidant who pulls back when things get serious is not punishing you. They're protecting themselves from a kind of closeness that, in their original context, was unsafe to depend on. They learned that needing people too much was dangerous. The withdrawal isn't aimed at you. It's aimed at a threat that stopped existing decades ago. And the anxious pursuit isn't manipulation. It's not weakness. It's a finely tuned monitoring system trying to do the job it was built for. Keeping a connection alive when the connection feels uncertain. Your system isn't broken. It's just running on signals that no longer match the actual environment. The trap, when you see it clearly, isn't really anyone's fault. It's two old strategies, doing their old jobs, on people who were never the original problem in the first place. Seeing this doesn't immediately fix anything. You can know exactly what's happening and still feel the pull. You can recognize the pattern and still find yourself in it. The work of changing this dynamic is slow, and it almost never happens inside the relationship that activated you. But the seeing changes something quieter. It changes how you understand what you've been through. The relationships you blamed yourself for. The partners you couldn't seem to stop wanting. The version of yourself that you couldn't understand. The one who kept choosing the wrong people. The one who couldn't stop pursuing. That version of you wasn't broken. They were running an ancient strategy. Looking for a familiar shape. Finding it every time. The pattern was never random. It was just invisible. The next time you find yourself drawn to someone whose attention feels harder to get than the people before them, someone whose closeness comes and goes, who's a step further away than you'd like, you'll have language for what's happening. You'll feel the pull, and you'll know what the pull is made of. You'll feel the rush of activation when they finally text back, and you'll know what the rush is doing. You'll feel the urge to pursue when they pull away, and you'll know what the pursuing is for. You don't have to act on any of it. You just have to know what it is. This pattern doesn't shift through willpower. It doesn't shift through trying harder or trying less, or any of the strategies that come naturally to a system that's already running. It shifts, slowly, when you can start to recognize the activation for what it is. And when you can start to give your nervous system experiences with people whose responsiveness is steady, whose closeness doesn't require pursuit, whose presence doesn't activate you in the familiar way. That kind of relationship, at first, feels strange. Almost boring. There's no chase. No mystery. No periodic withdrawal that makes the eventual return feel like rescue. The whole familiar emotional architecture is missing. Your nervous system, which was built for activation, doesn't quite know what to do with safety. But over time, with the right person, the system learns. Slowly. Quietly. The activation that felt like love starts to look more like alarm. The calm that felt like nothing starts to feel like the thing you were actually looking for the whole time. The next video goes deeper into the avoidant side of this dynamic specifically. What's actually happening inside someone who goes cold right when things are getting close? Why the withdrawal doesn't mean what it looks like it means, and what the avoidant person is usually trying to protect that even they don't fully see. For now, just this. The people who keep breaking your heart in exactly the same way are not random. The pattern is not your fault. And once you can see it clearly, you can begin. Slowly. And not all at once. To stop being inside it.